Simon Cowell is saying goodbye, and the reason has left fans absolutely stunned. After years of silence from Courtney Hadwin, the unforgettable powerhouse voice from America's Got Talent, troubling whispers have started to surface. A tragic diagnosis. Sudden show cancellations. And most shocking of all, Simon himself visibly shaken. This isn't just another tabloid story. It's something far deeper, something darker. Something even Jesse Waters briefly acknowledged on air, before the clip mysteriously vanished. What really happened between the rising star once called a phenomenon and the man who helped launch her career? The truth is heartbreaking, and no one saw it coming. Why now? And why the silence? The truth behind this story is unraveling fast, and what we've uncovered so far is truly shocking. When Courtney Hadwin first stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, no one quite knew what to expect. She was a shy teenager from a small English town, her hands trembling, her eyes nervously scanning the judges' faces. Her voice barely rose above a whisper as she named Janis Joplin and James Brown as her musical heroes. The moment felt uneasy, like a girl unsure if she truly belonged in such a massive spotlight. But then the music hit. Otis Redding's Hard to Handle exploded through the speakers, and in a flash, Courtney transformed. The nerves vanished. In their place stood a firecracker of a performer, radiating pure, raw, electrifying energy, like a force that had been waiting years to break free. What followed wasn't just a performance, it was a phenomenon. And yet, beneath that meteoric rise, something was quietly unraveling. Something she kept hidden, until now. The audience erupted. Within seconds, the room transformed into a frenzy of shock and applause, but it was Simon Cowell's face that said it all. His cautious curiosity melted into disbelief as he leaned in, eyes wide, mouth parted, as though trying to process the impossible. How could such a voice, raw, gritty, and soul-soaked, come from someone so young and unassuming? Courtney Hadwin didn't just perform, she ignited a cultural moment. Within hours, her audition clip exploded across the internet. Musicians, critics, and everyday fans were stunned. Who was this nervous teenager with slouched shoulders, channeling the spirit of a 60s rock legend? It wasn't just hype, Courtney had something rare. Her voice carried not only power, but pain, truth, and a bold disregard for perfection. She didn't sing songs, she embodied them. Simon summed it up perfectly. "You're not from this era," he said, half in awe, half in shock. "You're from a whole other world." That wasn't just a compliment, it was a recognition of something otherworldly. From that moment on, Courtney Hadwin's journey on America's Got Talent wasn't just a competition, it was a phenomenon. She didn't win the final prize, but she didn't really need to because her name was already known to people all over the world. She came back for America's Got Talent, the champions, and competed against experienced acts and international performers, and once again she held her own. While everyone cheered, Courtney remained a mystery. Unlike many young stars who rush to become famous, she didn't seem hungry for it. She rarely did interviews and rarely posted on social media. Her online presence was limited and mostly focused on music. Her fans stayed loyal, following her through original singles, covers, and rare public appearances, waiting for the next time she'd come out with something new. In the years that followed, many people wondered where that spark came from, since Courtney didn't have any formal training and didn't come from a family in show business. Instead, producers and mentors who worked with her say she had a kind of instinct. Some thought it was a gift, but others said it was more than that, it was something she couldn't control, something that used her as much as she used it. Simon Cowell would sometimes talk about her in interviews years later, but never in detail or with big headlines. Instead, he'd say things like, "That one performance I'll never forget." Or, "She was lightning in a bottle." He didn't have to say her name, everyone knew who he was talking about. Courtney Hadwin may have been discovered on a reality show stage, but what she brought to it felt timeless. As the years went by and the spotlight slowly moved to someone else, something else started to happen. It wasn't obvious at first, but it would soon bring up new questions about what really happened after the curtain fell. The bond that formed off-camera long after the lights dimmed on the America's Got Talent stage, people were still talking about Courtney Hadwin, but the real story, the one that didn't make the news, may have begun when the cameras stopped rolling. It was away from the cheers and golden confetti that a connection between a rising star and a man who had seen it all began to form. Simon Cowell has been known for many things over the years, as a brutally honest judge, an industry power broker, and an unwilling mentor. But every once in a while, someone comes along who breaks through that sharp exterior. With Courtney, it wasn't just her voice. According to people close to the show, Simon was most interested in Courtney because she wasn't trying to be a pop star and didn't want to be shaped into one. It was her strangeness, refusal to play the fame game, and awkward brilliance that caught his attention. He invited Courtney and her family to his home not long after her first AGT appearance. It wasn't part of a publicity stunt or show deal, it was completely off the books. What was said in that meeting is private, but one thing became clear soon after: Courtney signed with Simon's own label, Psycho Music. It wasn't a typical contract. Insiders said it was more protective than commercial. Unlike other young artists who get caught up in never-ending recording schedules, Courtney's deal gave her time. She wasn't forced to go on tour or release her first album right away. Instead, she was given the freedom to find her voice in a world that suddenly expected her to have it all figured out. Behind the scenes, Simon reportedly became something of a guide, but not in the way you might think. He kept an eye on her progress and sometimes reached out. There were even rumors that he had personally blocked some proposed media deals that felt exploitative in a world that moves quickly and forgets quickly. Simon didn't forget about Courtney, but as her fame grew, so did the pressure from fans who wanted to know more. Why wasn't she posting? Why were there so few interviews? Where was the album? There was no meltdown or scandal, just silence. Months and years went by, and Courtney only showed up in brief flashes. Courtney released music on her own terms, never following trends or explaining why she disappeared in between. Some thought she had lost interest, while others thought she was tired of the attention. But people who had worked closely with her said she was always different and moved by something else, that what made her want to sing in the first place didn't come from outside sources but from much deeper, more personal ones. More complicated, and Simon was unusually quiet during it all. He wasn't promoting her like he had other acts, he wasn't posting about her successes or hyping up her appearances. But whenever her name came up in interviews, he would change the tone of his voice. He wouldn't need to say much, just a pause, a glance, and a sentence like, "She's unforgettable." People started to wonder if Simon, who is known for switching focus quickly from one project to the next, had really let go of Courtney Hadwin. Why did his support for her seem more personal and protective? Whatever the reason, it was clear that their relationship wasn't normal. It wasn't about fame or ratings, it felt like something else entirely. In recent months, small signs started to show that this quiet connection was growing. Between them might have taken on a new, more emotional weight. Something had changed, but he wasn't ready to talk about it yet. Courtney Hadwin didn't just disappear overnight. It was more of a fade, the kind you only notice when you stop seeing her name in headlines or hearing new music on your feed. At first, it didn't seem unusual for artists, especially young ones who become famous quickly, to take breaks and regroup. But as the months turned into years, fans started to notice something was different. This wasn't a normal break, it was something harder to describe and much more unsettling. After her success on America's Got Talent, The Champions, Courtney released a few singles that were honest, raw, and true to her style. Songs like Breakable and Happy Christmas gave fans just enough to hold on to, but there wasn't an album, a tour, or a press cycle. She was there and then she wasn't, and when she did post on social media, it was a thank you message with comments turned off. Label politics were first blamed, maybe she was in a contract dispute or just waiting for a better deal. But that theory went away when Simon Cowell left Psycho Music and Courtney quietly moved on. But instead of bursting into independence, she seemed to shrink even more from view. Her fans started asking questions on Reddit, with threads titled, "Where is Courtney Hadwin?" and "Is she okay?" Some thought she had retired, while others thought she was tired of fame. But there were small signs that something else was going on. Posts would disappear without a trace, and comments would imply that she was in a fight or needed time to heal. There were also the lyrics to her newer songs, which were quietly released on YouTube and Spotify. They had a more confessional tone, with one song containing the line, "If I told you everything, you'd never hear me the same way again." Another ended with a whispered repetition of the word, "goodbye." For most artists, this wouldn't be a big deal, but for Courtney, who is very private, it set off alarm bells. Some fans tried to get in touch with her by leaving encouraging comments telling her to keep fighting or come back stronger, while others thought she might be dealing with something much more serious than burnout or artistic fatigue. Theories ranged from a personal tragedy to an illness that she wasn't talking about. No one had answers, and Courtney wasn't giving any. Then there was a video, a short, blurry clip shot at what looked like a small. At a local venue, Courtney performed with her voice still as strong as ever, but noticeably thinner and more fragile afterward. She didn't stay to meet fans. Instead, she left through the back door with someone who looked more like a nurse than a manager. The video clip went viral for a short time before being taken down. Around the same time, a blog post from someone who claimed to have worked on her early music sessions started going around. It mentioned a private health matter that had gotten in the way of her plans, but didn't say much more. The post was later deleted. Within days of all of this, Simon Cowell kept quiet about Courtney. He hadn't posted about her in years, but then, out of the blue, he cancelled an appearance at a London talent show, saying he had to go because of personal matters. It was a small thing that was easy to miss, but people who were paying attention couldn't help but notice the timing. The rumors got louder, and while no one knew for sure what was going on, the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. She wasn't just stepping away from the spotlight, she was disappearing from everything, including Simon, who is usually so calm and forward-looking, seemed to be pulling back. Of course, nothing was confirmed, no press releases or interviews, just rumors and a growing sense of unease. But the silence was starting to sound like a message. No one wanted to say this out loud. It was shocking. In the first reports that started to spread quietly online, the phrase, "Courtney Hadwin has reportedly received a tragic diagnosis," kept coming up, and no one seemed ready to believe it. There was no official statement or direct confirmation, just one unsettling line that could be heard on forums, in comment sections, and in private fan groups. What made it even worse was that it was said along with someone else, someone who wasn't a reliable source. "Simon Cowell has been saying goodbye." Yes, reports say that Cowell is saying goodbye after Courtney Hadwin's tragic diagnosis, but it wasn't in public and it wasn't with anyone else. Not in news releases or announcements, but in the way someone walks. Back when words fail, someone close enough to know the truth starts to pull away from the spotlight because going on as usual doesn't seem possible anymore. Some say Simon was seen leaving a private residence in tears, while others say he looked tired and visibly shaken at a recent industry dinner. He reportedly turned down 2 major TV appearances, including a planned reunion segment for AGT. People who know him say it wasn't professional fatigue, but something more emotional that hit him. In every version of the story, the diagnosis is never named. Some say it's neurological, others think it may be related to a rare autoimmune condition, and some have even said it's terminal. But none of these claims are backed up by medical records or direct statements from Courtney or her family. Still, Simon's reaction to the change in his schedule, his tone, and his unusual silence have given weight to the rumors, and that's where the shock really starts to settle in. It's not just that a young, talented artist might be facing something tragic, it's that someone like Simon Cowell, who has built a career on staying in control, suddenly isn't. For someone so deeply ingrained in the music industry, these kinds of emotional cracks are so rare that they're almost unheard of. That's why this change, no matter how small, has people talking. One longtime friend is said to have said, "Simon's been through a lot of scandals, career setbacks, and health problems of his own, but nothing ever That quote attributed to someone close to the Cowell circle has since been taken down from the original blog post where it appeared, but screenshots of it have been widely shared. There are no hospital photos, leaked documents, or official updates, only rumors and reactions. But even though there isn't any proof, it's hard to ignore the emotional signals. Courtney's own social media accounts have been completely empty for months, with no updates, and her YouTube channel, which used to be a place where she occasionally shared her art, has become a place where she has. Someone wrote, "It's like she's saying goodbye without saying it." Another said, "She gave us everything she had, maybe that's all she could give." The reality is no one knows for sure, but something has clearly changed. Simon's silence, which was meant to be strategic, now feels personal. His absence from events where he used to be a regular is being noticed, and the word goodbye suddenly feels much heavier than it should when attached to someone like Courtney Hadwin. The weight of these quiet exits, the unfinished songs, the disappearing posts, and the reportedly followed tears suggest something profound. If even part of it is true, it's more than just a loss for music, it's a personal heartbreak for the man who first gave Courtney her stage. He may now be stepping back not from the industry but from someone he once thought was untouchable, and if this is his way of saying goodbye, then the silence may be speaking louder than words. Support and silence. In the days after the rumors started to spread, something changed on Courtney Hadwin's part of the internet. It wasn't anger or chaos, but something softer but just as loud. Comments of support poured in on old videos, messages of love and strength showed up in posts from years ago, and fans weren't demanding answers, they were sending hope, as if she could feel it wherever she was. "Stay strong," Courtney started trending quietly in some parts of social media, not from celebrities or influencers reposting her work, but from regular people who remembered how her voice used to make them feel. They wrote things like, "You helped me get through my own pain," or, "Even if we don't hear from you again, you've already said more than most ever could." It wasn't just fandom anymore, it was maybe gratitude and grief wrapped in something tender. Despite all the noise online, Courtney herself hadn't posted anything online, not even an Instagram story or a tweet. The silence was heavy for someone who was already known for being private. It felt like someone quietly leaving a conversation they didn't want to be a part of. What surprised many, though, was Simon Cowell's silence. The man known for telling it like it is had become invisible. Some fans pointed out that he had been noticeably absent from recent press junkets and red carpet events, and that his normally promotional and upbeat social media posts had slowed to a crawl. Trickle when asked about his absence at a short public event. Outside a restaurant in London, Simon is said to have replied with a soft. The video was short, but the way he looked tired, distant, and maybe even heartbroken caused more concern. But even with all this worry, Courtney's team didn't say anything official. There were no denials, confirmations, or clarifications. There was just a void where answers should have been. Some thought the silence was intentional, a way to protect Courtney's privacy. Others saw it as a way for Simon to protect Courtney from the harshness of the headlines while he dealt with something he couldn't talk about. Music blogs tried to piece together a timeline, and they noted. The remaining time Courtney was visible in public, the last put up she preferred the remaining interviews she gave, not anything conclusive emerged, just small details that simplest deepened the mystery. A person even pointed out that her closing authentic release had a cover picture that featured a hospital bracelet slightly visible on her wrist. No person had noticed it earlier than now. It felt like a clue. Even Courtney's fellow contestants from AGT started to speak up, if simplest. In short, one in all them posted, "Thinking about Courtney today. Desire you're locating peace in something you are going via." It wasn't an affirmation of anything, but it becomes some other signal, some other ripple within the water. In moments like this, silence turns into its personal language, and in Courtney's case it began to experience like her absence become pronouncing, extra than any official update ever may want to. Enthusiasts weren't annoying to recognize the reality anymore. They have been bracing for it, hoping for a comeback, sure, but additionally, preparing for something else, something they could not call yet. And Simon, he nevertheless hadn't said her name now, not as soon as, but while an interviewer casually delivered up AGT's maximum unforgettable audition. Simon reportedly smiled unluckily and stated, "A few people in no way go away, you no longer, definitely Then he moved on as though the query had been an excessive amount of it's tough to know what is actual in the center of so much quiet, but one element is positive, something Courtney is facing. She's not on my own now, not in spirit now, not in memory, and not within the hearts of people who nevertheless play her songs, nonetheless feel her voice, and nevertheless look forward to whatever comes next. The track by no means stops. Courtney Hadwin's voice turned into by no means approximately perfection. It cracked, it growled, it soared continually, just on the brink of control. That was the magic, and perhaps it really is why even now, even in her absence, human beings nevertheless listen her, no longer at the charts or in stadiums, however, in headphones, in quiet rooms, in moments when the world feels a touch too heavy and a person wishes to don't forget what it means to experience something, because the silence keeps. Enthusiasts have lower back to her earliest performances like sacred texts. Her first audition is watched like a time pill, every body examined for signs no person noticed the primary time. Her authentic songs, once interpreted as artistic expression, now feel like hidden messages. Breakable does not just sound prone anymore, it hurts in a new manner. It's as though every lyric has taken on a double, that means one that nobody noticed till the rumors began to spread. Simon Cowell too remains distant. There is speak that he's spending more time far away from the spotlight, probably recomparing what comes next. He hasn't addressed the reports approximately Courtney directly, and perhaps he in no way will. However, for a person who has launched so many careers, this one seems to have followed him deeper than the rest. There may be something haunting approximately that silence, the manner he appears to be grieving something unstated. Nevertheless, now not the whole thing looks like an ending. There is a quiet wish within the way her fanatics refuse to let pass. They submit vintage performances, write tributes, Cowell her songs. They communicate of her as if she's nonetheless here, nonetheless recording, nevertheless approximately to surprise anyone with something new. And perhaps that's now not simply wishful thinking due to the fact if Courtney taught the sector something, it's which you don't need permission to be unforgettable. You simply need one moment, one tune, one voice, whether or not we ever pay attention. That voice stay once more. It's already performed something rare. It has carved itself into memory, the type that does not fade. The tale might stay unfinished, but the track, that component, by no means truly stops. What do you want the most approximately Courtney? Allow us to recognize within the feedback.